Well, after 5 years, it feels like it's been a long wait, and I hope everyone's going to agree it's worth it. Yeah, I mean, look, when I last saw David, John le Carré, before he died in September 2020, he shook my hand. He said, I hope you don't screw it up, and I hope the audience don't feel we have. It's been a long journey. He wrote a tsunami of words, as Errol says, 25 books. It took a lot of figuring out to get to here. Yeah, I mean, the amazing thing about David, and I'd say of Errol, and what they share is this preoccupation between the thin membrane between truth and fiction. And both David's work and Errol's work really explore that. And I think that aspect, I hope this film is more than the sum of its parts, that they come together and there are joint preoccupations in a lifetime of storytelling. This film really exhumes. Yeah, I think that spying and betrayal is just a stage, really, for a greater exploration of the human condition. I think what's fascinating about this film is that it actually explores individuality, character, and whether we are empty vessels as humans. And I think what's quite interesting is that Errol and David have this preoccupation, which is actually history is chaos. Underneath it all, there is no meaning. There's a sort of absurdism. And I think why the film, I believe, is a masterpiece from Errol Morris is because that shared preoccupation means they're exploring common ground.
Feels great. My first film was at the London Film Festival, probably in 1978. So it's terrific being back here for my latest film. My usual way of preparing for anything by reading more of what he had written, reading more about him. But I did prepare. The book cried out for some kind of visual representation. He's a very visual writer, and the Pigeon Tunnel in particular, a whole set of parables and aphorisms that lend themselves to some visual realization. It's ideal. I loved it. It certainly deepened it. I had read a number of books prior to becoming involved in this project. I had not read The Pigeon Tunnel. Loved it. It's still my favorite book of everything that he's written. But I became more and more familiar with his work, and I got to know him, which was an extraordinary opportunity. They were the ones who made it possible, who set it up, who brought me over here to London to meet David. They facilitated this entire thing. It would not have happened without them.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's very exciting, and it feels like we're coming home with the film in the best possible way. So it's great. I mean, Errol is a pretty extraordinary filmmaker, and I think my dad had always admired Errol's work, and was a great fan of The Fog of War, in particular. I mean, I think he's seen pretty much everything that Errol's made, so it got off to a very good start because I think there was a lot of respect between the two of them actually, and. It's been, and I think they shared a view of the world in lots of ways that is kind of made real in this film, and it's very exciting. Well, I think that, my dad had a very complicated childhood, and his father was a confidence trickster, a crook, really quite a seriously bad person, and my dad had a tough time growing up, which was never something he complained about. He always felt that was sort of fed his creative muse. And I think here in the film he talks about his childhood more than I've ever heard him talk about before, and it goes right to the core of who he is and what drove him to write, I think. Well, I think inevitably, because it's with our dad, it's a very personal journey, and actually, I think for me the extraordinary thing has been watching the film with an audience and seeing the way that different people relate to him in different ways, and that's been in heartwarming, actually, to realize sort of what he means to people and how they engage with him. He's a very he's a wonderful storyteller, and I think can hold an audience enthralled, and that's kind of what he does.
No, it's thrilling, and I know it's a screening that, I mean, it's obviously very significant in the movie that this is home turf, as you say, and also for our dad, who is the subject of the film, and that it would have been very important to him, and so it's very profound being here with the film. Well, I mean, I think what was fantastic about the inception of the movie was that, retrospectively, you can see that you had these two great minds converging. That Errol approached us with interest in a film, making a film about John le Carré, and in turn, John le Carré, our dad, was very interested in looking for a seminal conversation, something to capture that he knew would be significant in his legacy, and there was a magical kind of serendipity in those two things coming together. And obviously our dad passed away a year after recording this interview that is the backbone of the film. And looking at it now and being here this evening, you realize that there was a sort of alchemy in that moment. And these two great minds coming together for this conversation, this movie, was an extraordinarily serendipitous thing to happen.
Yeah, tour de force.
Yes, and what you get to see in the film is the convergence of really of John le Carré, the subject, but also Errol Morris, the filmmaker, and both the conversation and the film that evolved from that. Well, I mean, I think both le Carré, our dad, and Errol, in a way, they have quite a bleak view of humanity. That you see it in their work. There's not a cynicism, but a reflection on the state of humanity in that sense. But I also hope what you see in the film, in le Carré, but also in the way that Errol navigates that, you see a real connection with the positives of humanity. You see humor, you see a real joy in storytelling, and the capacity of individuals to make change. And I would hope the legacy in part of the film and the impact of the film is it makes you reflect, yes, on the past, yes, on history, yes, on all the things that are cyclically kind of wrong with the world, but also the potential to kind of inform those, to change those, to create in narrative the potential for a kind of better world in a sense. And that was also what motivated le Carré, and I think it continues to motivate Errol in his work. I think, obviously from a son's perspective, the film is a lot about his relationship with his father and what created his creative engine and what became, in many ways, the themes of his life and his work. It's interesting looking at that as a son to think how that impacted him as a father. And as a father, he was, in a way, informed by his own very negative childhood experience to really try to be a much better dad than that and to be really engaged with his kids. I think, obviously, that doesn't get directly addressed in the film, but I think what you do see is someone really looking for that connectivity, to find those points of connection with audience and story and character. And I hope, again, that when you watch the movie, you kind of carry that forward out of him. And I think for me, as someone obviously that knows the subject of the film very profoundly, I hope that what you bring is, what comes out of it is a sense of a deeply creative person, a sense of where that creativity came from, but also what it was reaching for and what it was communicating, and as I say, that sort of underlying positivity that ultimately drove him as much as anything else.